so the first thing that we've got to do with this guitar to get it ready to install the pickups is take the strings off. This Strat is actually pretty unique. It's a mid-80s Japanese Strat, one of my favorite kinds. But it actually has a locking nut up here, and it has what you call a Kohler style one bridge. So most of your Strats you can just start loosening the strings, but here I just have to loosen these locking nuts up here. And you don't have to take them all the way off, you just want them to be good and loose. Alright, and then we just go ahead and start turning these till they're nice and loose, each one of them. If you have a string winder, that'll also really help out the process. Alright, so now we loosened all the strings from up here. I went ahead and flipped our guitar over. On some Strats you could just kind of shove them through. Some of them you'll have to remove the back plate. I'm just going to go ahead and remove this back plate. Alright, so now we got our back plate off. Here's a quick look at what you're going to find inside your guitar. You've got your mounting plates. These are your tremolo springs, and right here is the back of your bridge, right? So normally what we do is we just take these strings from this side, we'll just kind of push them through, right? When we push them through, they come out here, we can just go ahead and pull them on out. Alright, now that we've got all of our strings off, the next thing that we're going to go ahead and do is remove the scratch plate. If you never opened up a Strat before, pretty much all of these electronics on here, all of your pots, your pickup selectors, your actual pickups that we're about to replace, are all connected to the scratch plate. So the thing that's really cool is we take this off, we got access to all of our electronics. So I'm just going to go ahead and take the same screwdriver and go ahead and take these all off. You only need to remove the screws that go along the outer edge of the scratch plate. Alright, you'll notice that next to each pickup there are two screws, which we are going to have to remove these later on. These are what's actually connecting these pickups to the scratch plate. And then there's also two screws that are going to be on either side of your pickup selector, and we don't need to remove those either, right? We're just looking for the simplest solution to get this scratch plate off. Alright, so we unscrewed all those bolts. And now we can go ahead and lift this up. There's going to be 3 wires that are not attached to the scratch plate. You have 2. You have a hot and a ground that's going to go to your actual input jack, and then you're going to have another ground that's going to go through the guitar. Just kind of set this back down. All the way through, and it's going to come right here. It's normally soldered right onto this, and that's just helping ground the guitar, solder onto a big chunk of metal. So a good idea is to have maybe an old t-shirt or something like this, a rag or something to place underneath this, because we're going to be doing some soldering and everything, and if you have a real nice finish on your guitar, you don't want it to get messed up. So I just kind of wrap this around. So now I have access to my pick guard without anything. So I'm going to get a close-up of the wiring now. Alright, so now that we can really take a look, we see that we have our 3 pickups, right, that we're going to replace all 3 of these. And what we do is we have 2 wires here, right? We have this, in this case, our live wire on this particular one is the white. And generally all 3 of these, if you see all 3 of these white wires, we kind of separate them all. They're all going right over here to our pickup selector. So let me flip this over really quick so you can kind of see. That's this guy right here, right? Pretty familiar with that. Let's flip that back over. So these are the 3 live wires that are actually bringing our signals from our pickups. From our bridge, middle, and neck pickup, right? And then it goes right to this, brings that hot signal. Now each one also has this chain of the black wires. So in this case, the black wires are our ground. So the first thing that we have to do to go ahead and remove these pickups is we need to desolder all of these and all of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to flip this guy over like this. And now you can see these screws that I was talking about earlier. We're going to go ahead and unscrew these, and this will actually remove the pickups from the actual pick guard. So just go ahead and loosen all these screws off. Alright, so I went ahead and took all the screws out, and as you can see, Just kind of keep these in place. These are all nice and loose. All these off. The other thing you'll notice is that on each of these we have a pickup cover, right? I'm going to go ahead and reuse these pickup covers for my Van Zandts. Some of you might want to replace it with something else, but pickup cover just sits right on top of this, so you can actually go ahead and reuse this part, right? So the next stage is that we're going to go ahead and start desoldering all of this. Alright, so now what we got is we take our solder sucker that we've already caulked, I already went over, it's in our gun, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to heat this up. The other thing that is handy is if you get your hands on some soldering braid, desoldering braid. Right, and we can already see that, we got that. And see how that wire just comes off right, nice and easy? Right, it was soldered right there, so we have that clear. Alright, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and try to get a little bit of this solder off, and hopefully these guys will come right off nice for us. So we just go ahead and heat up this solder here. There we go, it's starting to flow. Alright, do that one more time. We got a lot of solder on here. Alright, so it's starting to come off. Alright, so now we've got everything desoldered, everything's nice and loose. We can start replacing. And like I said, I kind of recommend replacing one at a time. We'll start with just go ahead and take this neck position out. We're going to keep the cover. Alright, some people actually will even throw them in their rear. And we'll just go ahead and disregard this. Here is my little end for neck, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this guy out of here. And this is what you actually get. You got your Van Zandt. Our white is our hot signal, and our black is our ground. So it's exactly the same as these old pups that were taken out. It's coming with 2 replacement screws, and just like I said before, you know, they're using the rubber tubing, but you can also see like right here, these that were spring loaded. If you wanted to go spring rather than the rubber tubing, you could. I actually like this, it's a little easier to work with. So all we do is we go ahead and we're gonna put this guy right back in. If you see there's a little V shape on here, we normally want that V to kind of be facing downwards. Alright, so we're gonna do one more. Here is our new Van Zandt guy. Right? Here are the screws that we're using. Here's the pickup casing. So the easiest thing is to take these screws, and you got the little rubber guys, is what I do is I stick them through the top part and then just kind of thread this rubber. Right? The rubber acts as a spacing in between the pickup and the pick guard, but it also is pretty handy for keeping these screws in place as we're going ahead and placing that. So, alright, so now we got this. We take our old pickup casing, or if you have a new one, we just put that right, it's right on over. And I think I explained before that normally you can even reverse this, you get different effects, but normally they're all kind of pointing downwards. That's the way we go. Alright, so then we just sit this guy right through here, okay, and he'll fit right in there. And then what we can do is go ahead and flip this up, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but just flip this up, and then I can go ahead and screw these right into our new pickup. Here's one. Oops. And then.
So I just wanted to take a couple seconds to flash a schematic of a wiring diagram for the Strat. So if at any point you get confused on where to resolder these wires, you can just come right back to this point in the video and take a look.
Alright, so now we've got all of our Van Zandt pickups installed on our scratch plate, and now we need to resolder everything. What we got is, we have these pretty long cables. On the Van Zandts, the white is actually the hot wire, and this black one is our ground. So all of our black ones are going to go ahead and they're going to go to ground, right? So what I normally do is I kind of create a chain. So it comes from here, and then you pick up the one from here and then here. And then that way, we keep everything nice and neat, and we're able to kind of connect them right here to the ground. Next, we're going to have to go ahead and get all of our hot wires are going to come right over here to our switch plate, right? So the first one right here, this is our neck position. And if you need, I've got the schematic on here, and I'll show you a close-up of the schematic. But we're going to want this neck position to come right over here to the second to last connector right on this neck plate. And you'll go ahead and look at the schematic if you're confused. So what I want to do is I want to cut some of this wire. I've got too much wire, right? So I'm going to go ahead and grab my handy wire cutters, right? And I don't want to cut it too tight. I don't want it really tight because then I won't have any play. I want a little bit of play, so I'm going to cut just about this much off, right? Now, with these kind of wires, we actually have the cloth jacket, so we can literally just kind of pull these guys back. I don't know how well you can see that, but now I have an exposed wire, right? So we'll go ahead and stop right then, and we'll talk about tinning them. There's lots of great videos on soldering techniques, but I'm going to go ahead and just show you how to tin this wire. So normally what you do is you get a little bit of solder on your soldering iron, press it up against that wire, and then heat up your wire, and it'll just melt right into that wire. That way we go ahead and we get a little bit of solder on the wire before we actually connect it to our joint. Alright, so now I'm going to actually attach these wires here. The best thing to do is what I like to do is I like to take my needle nose pliers and make a little bend right here. Hopefully you can see that. And then I just come right here, and that way it kind of connects on. I'm going to just use these pliers again to kind of weight this down. So now what we do is normally you always want to put your soldering iron against the largest piece of metal or piece of mass. In this case would be our clip on our pickup selector. Let that heat up. Go ahead and use a nice liberal amount. We got that nice and soldered on. So I'm just going to repeat this step for all of my hot wires, right? Alright, so now we've got all of our live wires soldered in place. Hopefully they're the correct place. Again, you know, if you got confused in that step, go back to where I flashed that schematic. The next thing is we got all of our ground. I've actually already trimmed all of these to the right length, and you'll kind of see how to properly trim them. But what I do is I run a chain down like this. Another thing that I like to do is I use some of these zip ties, and I'll actually wrap them as I'm going down around my wires. That way I get a nice, keep it nice and clean in here, right? And then you can go back and trim the excess. But that way you keep it nice and neat in here. And the next guy who has to come in here and do some work on your guitar, some mods, or if it's you, then you'll appreciate it, definitely. So we've got that nice and put together. So with the grounds, we're all going to solder these grounds right back to the jacket of our pot. So there's no particular order that you have to solder them back on there. There's already a lot of solder on there. Sometimes your solder might be old or anything, but in this case, I can pretty much just press them against there and get them right back on there. Alright. There's some different techniques to this, but there we go. And I'm going to pour a little bit of solder on top of those just to make sure that they stay in place nice and good for me. Also, one thing that I failed to mention earlier on, it's a good idea to make sure that you're in a well-ventilated room, right? So let these dry, and now we've got everything soldered back together. As you can see, we're ready to put our guitar back together and give it a play. All right, we've got this guy all wired up. I've got a Fender Deluxe Reverb right here. And here we go. Let's start off with our bridge position. Alright, we'll move to that in-between bridge and middle. Good. Just our middle. Nice. Alright, there's our in-between neck and middle. Alright, congratulations on your new Zandt pickups. I hope everything comes out just as good as mine did.